So the legal route is joining. Just bear with us for a minute.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All good.
Okay. Sorry for the inconvenience.
Completely fine. I understand.
Yes, ma'am. So, shall we start?
Yeah.
Okay, ma'am. So, hello, everyone. Good evening, viewers and respected ma'am. Welcome to today's session. Hope you all are safe and doing well in this pandemic situation. I'm Chandrajyoti Mishra from Dibrugarh University. Today, I would like to introduce you all a very special and talented and young advocate. She is an advocate of Supreme Court and graduate BLLB honors from Amity University, UP. Specialized in business laws and cyber security, she did her practice from Supreme Court of Delhi. District Court, DRT, NCDRC, NGT, and also Allahabad High Court. Her practice area was arbitration, criminal, and matrimonial civil. Am I right, ma'am?
Yes, thank you.
So, before we start, I would like to inform you that the session will end in 1 hour and the speaker will get 40 minutes to speak and rest 20 hours. Rest 20 minutes will be for the questions. And if someone left with their questions, then please don't mind. So, ma'am, you can start now. Thank you.
I would just like to add, Chandrajyoti, a little here that if any questions not answered after today's session, I can
Yes,
leave
ma'am.
my email ID with you and they can message me or they can email me the questions and I will personally reply to all the emails.
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
So the idea is to cover the entire concept.
Yes, ma'am.
So hi, good evening everyone. Thank you so much, Chandrajyoti, for the lovely introduction.
Thank you, ma'am.
So today's topic, let's start with today's topic. So today's topic is decriminalization of suicide and the Mental Health Care Act. So this is a very talked about topic recently and now everybody has started to acknowledge mental health care. So I would like to quote something and it's a thought that I have always carried with me. I think it is trauma is the thing that creates changes that you don't choose. But healing is all about creating changes that you do choose. So everything is which is human is mentionable, and everything which is mentionable is more manageable. So this is the whole concept of mental health. We have to start acknowledging it, and we have to start accepting people going through certain mental illness. So today's webinar, let me just give you a brief summary on what we are covering today. We are covering the aspects and the features covered in the recent act that we've come across, that is the Mental Health Care Act. And then we will be talking about the pros and the cons of the decriminalization of suicide, which was very talked about after the Mental Health Care Act. So how do we define suicide? It's a very basic term. Suicide is taking one's life if the death is not natural and it happens due to your act, due to your individual's act, and they harm their life with the agenda of motive of ending your own life. That is the basic and the common terminology of suicide, right? So when we talk about laws relating to suicide, earlier the most talked about law is Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code. The most ancient law, if I may say, more than 30 years of ruling of 309, when criminalization of suicide was there. So I will just read you the ingredients of Section 309. Section 309 talks about attempts to commit suicide. It quotes, whoever attempts to commit suicide and does any act towards commission of such offence shall be punished with simple imprisonment for a term which may extend to 1 year or with fine or with both. So now what is the present status? This is some ancient history I'm talking about. Now we are living in 2020. So With the enactment of Mental Healthcare Act, IPC Section 309 was repealed, and finally the Parliament has passed Mental Healthcare Bill in 2016, which initially repealed the IPC Section 309 and decriminalized the offense of suicide.
Yes.
So now, coming further, what is decriminalization of suicide? Let's talk about that first. And then we'll cover the mental health care. Decriminalization of suicide attempts to cut down the undue stigma and avoid punishment in aftermath of the incident. So the basic ideology here is, if a person decides to commit suicide, it is not a thought that comes in the mind within a second. It's not a very sudden thought. I can vouch for it that the person has paid enough thought. How will they commit suicide? What is going to happen? They have calculated, they have made their chart, however we say the do's and don'ts, the pros and cons of everything. They've done that. And it's not within a second, it's not a very sudden decision, as I said. So, for a person who's already planning to commit suicide, are you really, and by any chance, if they survive after the attempt, so would you please tell me, after such stressful situation, are you really planning to criminalize and charge the person of that certain offenses? I don't think so that's very ethical and that's very morally boosting. I think for the person who is in that position to commit suicide, maybe should be given appropriate health awareness should be acknowledged and the treatment. So the main idea behind the mental health care bill was this only, to remove that stigma and the aftermath of the incident. So I will be discussing more about decriminalization of suicide further, because before coming to decriminalization of suicide, I would like the viewers to understand what is the Mental Health Care Act and how it came into force. So, as we say, legislation plays a vital role when we, with the changing society, the need for appropriate legislation grows day by day. So, insight of illness may not be present in majority of mental disorders when compared to physical illness. It's a very basic thing we say that अगर हमें कोई चीज दिखती नहीं है तो हम उसको acknowledge नहीं करते हैं. So you can see the physical harm, the physical injuries on a body, but you are not able to see the mental injuries. So the main concept is this only, that the insight of illness may not be present in majority of mental disorders when compared to physical illness, and the law guides the treatment in proper direction. So the draft, initially when it was introduced, the first draft of mental health came in 2011. And since then, if you may see, it was passed in 2017. It had to go through certain arguments, certain changes, certain amendments with regard to the mental health awareness and the treatment. So, 2017, the Parliament approved, it enacted the law, but this law came into force in May 2018. So, even after enactment by the Parliament, it took full 1 year for the law to come into force. Now, what is the main objective behind it, and what are the main salient features? What is the preamble of the Mental Health Care Act? So let's get into that for the basic understanding. Mental Health Care Act, also known as the MHA, initially the laws were in 1987, and now it is an amended act with different provisions and amended provisions with advanced society needs. There was a start for human approach for treating mental disorders with provisions for human rights, but without emphasis on issues like consent. So, consent, when I talk, it is the main idea, the Mental Health Care Act, the main agenda, it all revolves around informed consent. We will be talking about terminologies in detail thereafter, as it involves the Department of Police and Honorable Court in admission and discharge of procedures. So, why was there a need for act? Convention of the Rights of Persons with Disability, which is CRPD, popularly known as CRPD, was passed in the United Nations General Assembly in 2006 and was signed and ratified in India in 2007 and made India eventually responsible for the revision of disability laws in India and introduction of the Mental Health Care Act. So, Mental Health Care Act is also published in the spirit of UNCRPD with human rights of persons with mental illness and review both and acting as the backbone of the mental capacity. Now, the objective, the main idea behind this. Mental Health Care Act. It is an act to provide mental health care, mental awareness, mental acknowledgement, and services include treatment for people with mental illness to protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of such persons during delivery of mental health care and services. The Mental Health Care Act 2017 aims to provide mental health care services for persons mentally ill. Now, what is mentally ill? It is very categorically defined in the Mental Health Care Act. It ensures that the person or the people have the right to live lives with dignity and not being discriminated and or charged against or harassed. Because when we talk about the fundamental rights and when we talk about your constitutional rights, so the law is very clear. Every person has a right to live with personal liberty and every person has a right to equality. Then why do we treat these people differently?
Is there any I think Chandrajyoti, you are reconnecting.
I think it is going. Yeah, we're reconnecting. So, for this, we need to understand what are the terminologies
Explain in the act.
So I'll walk you through section 2 of the Act, which defines certain terminology in depth. I will not be covering each and every definition, but the most important terms that are used again and again in the Act, so that you have an idea what the Mental Health Care Act is all about. So first, coming down to section 2G, what is a clinical psychologist? So, clinical psychologist is a person first having the recognized qualification in clinical psychology from an institution approved and recognized by the Rehabilitation Council of India. Constitution under Section 3 of the Rehabilitation Council Act, Indian Act 1992. Second, having a postgraduate degree in psychology or clinical psychology or applied psychology and a master's of philosophy in clinical, medical or social psychology, obtained after completion of a full-time course of 2 years and so on. The rest is not required. So now if you see on their perusal of the definition, we understand that we are not giving these people to anybody. We are giving them to certified people who are specialized in these fields, recognized by the law and their appropriate councils. So this is very important for the person to be treated by the right person, because then only they will carry the right approach and the right plan for the treatment. Then what is mental health care? Mental health care includes analysis and diagnosis of a person's mental condition and treatment as well as care and rehabilitation of such persons for his mental illness and suspected mental illness. So there are two things. One is identified mental illness and the second being suspected. So when you talk to somebody, sometimes you suspect that the person is going through some mental disturbances or mental illness. That comes under the ambit of suspected mental illness. And the third being identified one, which is identified by the appropriate psychologist, clinical psychologist or the psychiatrist. That is the identified one. Now, third being mental health establishment. Now, this act talks about mental health care establishment where the treatment is to be carried on. Mental health establishment means any health establishment including Ayurveda, yoga, naturopathy, Unani, homeopathy, etc. establishment. So we are not considering into one or just one, because there are so many different treatments and we are not sure which treatment will be more suitable or appropriate to any individual. So we provide a vast variety of treatments under this act. Can be Ayurveda, can be yoga, Unani, can be homeopathy, so on. Whichever and however it suits you. It is not all about allopathic medicine. We also have other alternatives here. So, by whatever name called, either wholly or partly, meant for the care of such persons with mental illness, established, owned, controlled, or maintained by the appropriate government, local authorities, or the state authorities, trust whether private, public, any organizations or NGO, howsoever. Moving on, who are mental health professionals? Now, there is a very wide variety of mental health professionals. It is for a very common man. You just know a person who's a counselor, who's a psychiatrist. But no, this act specifically defines a mental health care professional. First being the psychiatrist as defined in clause 10. Second, being a professional registered with the concerned state authority under section 55 of the said act. Third, a professional having a postgraduate degree in Ayurveda, in Manovigyan, Evam Manas Rog, or postgraduate degree in homeopathy, in psychiatry, or a postgraduate degree in Unani. So, you are not just entitled to a person who is graduate or a postgraduate in psychology. We are providing a vast and a variety of ambits to be covered under this law. Ayurveda, homeopathy, and people who are specialized under these subheads are also recognized under this act as mental health professionals, and they are acknowledged and they are very much eligible to treat a person.
Yes.
Moving on, the main aspect, what is mental illness? So this is the most about definition and the most, I can say, comprehensive definition defined, because you can see the compassion with the person who's made this legislation, because he's tried to cover every aspect and not left anything. So mental illness as defined in section 2S of the act, it says, means a substantial disorder of thinking, mood perception, ordinary or memory that grossly imparts your judgment, behavior, capacity to recognize reality, or ability to meet the ordinary demands of life. Mental conditions associated with the abuse of alcohol and drugs, but does not. So I would like to emphasize on this fact that this does not include mental retardation, which is a condition of arrested or incomplete development of the mind of a person, especially characterized by subnormality of intelligence. So, if you ask my opinion, honestly, I would think that this is a drawback in this act. But this is a very new act and it should be amended with time to time. So maybe in near future, we can include mental retardation as well as a wider aspect of the definition. Now, what are the salient features of this act? I hope I am more clear and I'm able
Yes,
to
ma'am.
understand.
Yes.
Right? Because if anything you need to clarify, you can interrupt me in between,
Okay,
and
okay.
I'll describe and I'll be more elaborative with the discussion.
Yes, ma'am.
Because we have a positive time in trying to cover the entire act with a limited number of everything, not
Yes,
doing
ma'am.
section. So, what are the salient features of the act? First, I'll give you brief pointers, and I think that'll cover the entire thing. First, every person who, except a minor, has a right to take advance directives by writing. So, by writing, I'm mainly talking about informed consent. In this act, you have to give your informed consent for taking any treatment or any advanced directive treatment. Then it empowers the patient to choose his or her treatment and appoints the representative to make decisions. So, for example, I acknowledge myself as a mentally ill person and I go to such authorities and I tell them that I want to get treated. So, I will have to appoint the representative on my behalf who will take decisions on my behalf regarding the treatment, on the course of treatment, because at every point in time it will not be possible for me to give my consent So initially, as a matter of procedure, I will give my consent to the representative, and that representative will further give directions regarding my treatment. Moving on, minor patients. If we talk about minor patients, so the parent or the local guardian or the caretaker comes under the representative. Here, a minor cannot choose a third individual as their representative. Whoever is the legally appointed guardian or the parent of a minor is deemed to be the representative under this act. For me, who's a major, I still have that authority to choose a third person as my representative, and that is the liberty. So, this act is not applicable in situations of emergency, which is a drawback, as I must say, because like we are witnessing this unprecedented situation of pandemic, and just in case if there's any emergency, if need be, so this act will not be applicable. So, in my opinion, this really needs to be acknowledged. Reason means you cannot neglect mentally ill people just because the country or the state is in a situation of emergency. Moving on, the psychiatrists or the mental health professionals, they need to plan treatment in advance. So you cannot just go like, okay, now I feel like doing this, I feel like doing that. You need to have a laid down procedure of treatment. You need to act. You need to maintain a file. See, this is how I'm trying to proceed with the treatment. This is my line of action. And then this has to be discussed with the representative of the patient or the mentally ill person. And the consent has to be taken on the line of action as well. So that is the foremost duty of the mental health professional to make aware about the treatment, the shortcomings, and the time that will be taken in the treatment. Last but not the least, if a person is unsatisfied by the treatment, so the Mental Healthcare Act has appointed a specific board for people to approach regarding such mental health professionals and report them in such a manner. You have to write a complaint and you have to tell them that what are your reasons for your unsatisfactory results, and then the board will form a committee, and so the committee will give their verdict on whether the complaint is acknowledged, is accepted, or disposed of. Now, moving on, what are the rights of a mentally ill person? So now every individual has a right under this constitution. So even mentally ill people have this right. This Mental Healthcare Act talks about the rights of individuals. So, first, appropriate government should make provisions of mental health institutions in every district. So it should not be state-wise, it should be district-wise. It should be approachable, it should be affordable. That is the main agenda. Because if it is not affordable or approachable, then I don't think so there is any need for me to staying here in Delhi NCR and it's not having any appropriate authority or healthcare institution to be approached to. Then it is of no use if I have to maybe go to someplace else. You are hampering my right. You are just hampering my right of justice in this procedure. So moving on to the certain other rights. Mental health persons should not travel long distances for treatment, like I just said. It made provision for mentally ill people to live with dignity. I, as an individual, should have an equal right to live with dignity as maybe any other person who's there. Mentally ill is not anything you should be embarrassed of, as the basic
Yes.
stereotype in society has been. And I think with the coming laws and everything, we are becoming more aware and acknowledging everything. If I may just discuss, until recently, we had a celebrities suicide case that was not talked about. I don't want to name here anybody. But after that, post that, and with everything going on, everybody is talking about mental health a lot. And people are acknowledging it. People are accepting people who are going through anxiety, who are going through stress. Because with the pandemic going on, there is not just one drawback that has come. There are 10 number of things. There are so many things that now we are doing virtually. So with the advancement of that, people are also becoming more aware about it. So with equally acknowledging the person who is mentally ill, that they have a right to live with dignity. Moving on, women and child should be separated for safety of the child and it should be reviewed in every 15 days. So when we talk about this particular right, I would like to emphasize on, I would give example of domestic violence cases. For example, if we talk about a household, and if the person is if a man is the person who is mentally ill and subjected to treatment, so in that very particular household, the women and the child should be given a separate residence, and the situation should be reviewed first for the safety. Second, you don't know how the severity of the condition of the mental ill person, the amount of treatment at the time that will be required. So for this safety, you have to have an alternative residence for them, alternative place where they can come, they can reside for, and there should not be any limitation to it. Okay, you have to just wind up in 30 days. Because everything it depends on person to person. Maybe for this problem that I'm facing, I am having 30 days time. Maybe I take 30 days time to recover. Maybe somebody takes 15 days. Maybe somebody takes 2 months.
Yes.
So there should not be any limitation when you are providing any alternate residence to women and children. And such conditions should be reviewed time and again for basic development of the child, because it slowly hampers the cognitive mind of the child during the early age. So we need to provide that environment, that upbringing to the child, so that that particular incident does not really leaves an impact on the development of the child. Moving on, rights of confidentiality. This is a very important right. So when I go to a counselor, I am asked to sign a non-disclosure agreement. And the counselor also is supposed to sign that as per the law. In this non-disclosure agreement, the counselor is vouching that they will not disclose my personal information with anybody. Maybe talk about anything publicly, even in any conferences, anything, give examples, naming names and everything. So that is the right of confidentiality that is covered under this act. Then moving on, Constitution of Mental Health Review Board. Now, when I talked about earlier, when you are unsatisfied with certain health professionals, there is a board that is constituted that you can approach. So we are talking about the constitution of the Mental Health Review Board. First, every state has a form to review board and should consist of first a district judge as a chairperson. Second, 2 members of whom one shall be a psychiatrist and the other shall be a medical practitioner. So it is very important for a psychiatrist or a medical practitioner to be on board. The reason we are acknowledging we need to have an expert, because district judge is here to lay down and see whether the laws are being followed or not. The laid down legislation is being carried or is being executed or not. But the ingredients, the main agenda of the problem, that is to be decided by the medical practitioner or the psychiatrist or anybody from the mental health professional who's gonna see this approach and who's gonna decide whether your complaint is justified or not. And 2 members who shall be persons with mental illness or caregivers or persons representing organizations or persons with mental illness. So this can be any organization or an NGO or a trust, anybody or the representative from their side, and then even they can be a part of this committee or the board. Moving on to admission, treatment and discharge of mentally ill people. Then independent patients or an independent admission should be done as far as possible. I as an individual should have a right to go and acknowledge myself as a mentally ill person and tell them that I want to get treated. So first is Rowley Mental Health Care Act 2017 identifies independent patients and independent admission mentally ill people who require treatment beyond 30 days should be reviewed by 2 psychiatrists. So, when, like I said, mentally health professionals will have to lay down a plan of action. Will have to lay down what is the course of the treatment. So, they will have to have marked timelines. They have daily charts, if I may give as an action taken plan. And then, after 30 days, it is reviewed. If within 30 days there is no improvement, then the same situation will come under for review for 2 psychiatrists. That particular situation will be seen and will be governed by 2 psychiatrists and 2 experts of the very particular field. Then no restraint shall be used as a form of punishment if the patient should be kept on supervision. You should not, if I may say, not restrict the patient, should not use any force on the patient. If required, if a situation arises that is such an extreme situation, then the patient should be kept under supervision of more than 1 psychiatrist. You should not force, you should not train. All these methods are very old and this will not be done. You provide better supervision and daily review of the situation, proper medication and proper treatment. That is our main agenda behind the Mental Health Care Act.
Yes, ma'am.
Professionals conducting research should take signed informed consent of mentally ill people and consent from the board. So when we talk about the daily, it is evolving. The mental health awareness is evolving. The disorders are evolving, and every individual goes through different situations. So coming back to that, when there are situations where we need to do researches also, because if I am facing something extreme, for a second person to maybe face a similar situation, we need to have research done so that we have a better line of action and the proper medication available. For you to do research on my mental illness, I need to have, or my representative under the Act has to give me a written consent, and that consent also has to be taken by the board under this Act, telling you and giving you authority that yes, you can do so, and that you will be covered under the ambit of Mental Health Care Act for carrying out research on a mentally ill person. Now, Chapter 8 of this Act mainly talks about duties of police officers in respect to mentally ill people. So this is in collaboration with Chapter 13. So these are the 2 chapters that we need to discuss in alignment. That talks about the duties of police officers in respect of mentally ill people. First, it is the duty of the police to give protection to mentally ill people wandering outside the area of police station. Second, arrangement to take this person to the appropriate mental health institution.
Yes, ma'am.
So it is the duty. In fact, this should be the duty of every individual, every independent individual to take and not let anybody wander just very
Yes, ma'am.
casually on the road. If you come across somebody who is going through something like this, I would humbly request as a moral duty to please acknowledge that and take that individual to appropriate, either you take it to the police station and the police can take them to the appropriate healthcare institutions, or if you're aware about where are the whereabouts of the mental health care institutions, then you may take them there yourself. Then, now penalties and punishments. What are the penalties and punishments under this Act? It is covered under Chapter 16. Unauthorized institutions will be punished. Not every institution is authorized. A lot of people just establish themselves claiming to be that we are the mental health care institutions. So there are basic laid down laws and provisions and basic guidelines that one health institution has to meet for them to be registered officially and legally under this Mental Health Care Act. And if not so, the first time punishment is from 5,000 to 50,000. And if the person is committing that offence again, then the second time it comes, so the penalty is 2 lakh or above for the second time. Now, any person do the work, who does work against this act, or any medical practitioner who does not follow the guidelines laid down under this act is liable to be punished up to 10,000 rupees or 6 months jail. I personally feel that these punishments should be more deterrent for them to follow, and
Yes, ma'am.
should be more emphasized on while making people aware. This is not, see, because this is a very new act, very new legislation. As an individual, maybe not everybody is aware about, not everybody is very clear about the provisions of the Mental Health Care Act and even the rights of the mentally ill people. So you need to understand that, and if you find anything which is going against the guidelines, please report it to the board. The board will see it, and then that person will be subject to punishment and penalties under this act. So, moving on. Now, what are the landmarks of the act? Landmarks of the act. Until this bill, anyone who attempted suicide was booked face charges and prosecution. The maximum penalty was 1 year in a prison. Now, moving on, what is decriminalization of suicide? As the topic of today's session focuses on what is decriminalization of suicide. So, I want you to understand why suicide was a criminal offence, like I discussed under the ambit of Article Section 309 of the Indian Penal Code. And now, what is the legal scenario and how it is going to move forward. So, this situation has pros and cons both. So, when we talk about decriminalization of suicide, I would want to quote certain judgments which time and again have, overviewed that Section 309. I am talking prior of the Mental Health Care Act, prior of the enforcement of the Act. Certain High Court and even the Supreme Court time and again have said that this is not a very laid down act and it is not justifiable. I would just like to quote a very landmark judgment from where it all started. So this is Maruti CPT Dubai versus the state of Maharashtra. In this, I will just give you a brief summary here. The Bombay High Court ruled that Section 309 is unconstitutional and it violates Article 21, which is the right of every individual to live with right to life and personal liberty. The court observed that when the freedom to remain silent exists concurrently with the freedom of speech and expression, there should also exist a right to die concurrently with the right to life. The desire to die is not unnatural, and so there should exist a right to die. In 1987, the decision of Andhra Pradesh High Court in Srina Jagdishwar versus State of Andhra Pradesh contradicted the aforesaid decision. So when we talk about 1987, prior to the 2017 Act, there was the Mental Health Care Act 1987, which had its own shortcomings and its own challenges. Maybe we can discuss in detail somewhere in another time.
Yes, ma'am.
Focusing about only on to Mental Health Care Act 2017. Another case which is a very landmark case and time and again reiterated when we talk about mental health care judgment is Srimati Gyan Kaur versus State of Punjab. So the Supreme Court here in this very particular case held that the right of life is a natural right, and while suicide is an unnatural extinction of life, and therefore the latter is inconsistent with the former. Aspects which are in accord with and will add on the life with dignity comes under the ambit of Article 21 and not those extinguishes it. The court thus upheld the constitutional validity of 309 section in this very particular judgment. However, as an exception to this, the Apex Court, which is the Supreme Court of India, in Aruna Ramchandra Chanbhaug versus Union of India and others, upheld the validity of passive euthanasia, assisted suicide, whereby life support of the terminally ill patient is removed or halted. So far as India is concerned, as an independent country and independent state, it is considered that right to live life does not include the right to die. but provides right to die with dignity, which is facilitated by passive euthanasia, like I said, and only in certain circumstances we can consider your plea to right to die with dignity, passive euthanasia, and certain circumstances are permitted with the leave of Supreme Court in this very particular judgment. Moving on, decriminalization of suicide. So when we talk about decriminalization of suicide, it has n number of approaches. There is an ongoing debate when you come across articles. It is all over the internet, even in day-to-day life. There is a debate whether you should decriminalize the suicide or not. When I talk about India as a country, has retained and preserved many laws coming from the British era, specifically the Article Section 309 of the IBC, which is now repealed. After so many years, after hundreds of years of the laid down legislation, after so many years, now we have come to a situation where we think about repealing such laws, in amending our laws, enhancing our laws, and so on. So when Mental Health Care Act 2017 came, it was enforced in 2018, May 2018. The scope of the 309 section was limited and was repealed from the IPC. The relevant provisions read as, notwithstanding anything contained in section 309 of the Indian Penal Code, any person who commits or attempts to commit suicide shall be presumed, unless proved otherwise, to have severe stress and shall not be tried and punished under the code. India has now decriminalized the attempts to suicide or attempts to commit suicide, and views of the issues are requiring treatment rather than punishment. So this is a very good approach, I must say. While decriminalization of suicide under this very particular act, under section 115(1) of Mental Health Care Act 2017, we are more focusing on providing mental health care and the resources to the person who was in a situation where they thought that maybe ending their life was a solution, and so on. Moving on, instead of punishing and everything, you have to acknowledge and maybe give the appropriate redressal to that individual. Now, if we talk about the good points, there are obviously arguments against it. That why it should not be decriminalized, or why decriminalization was a very big step for the Indian judiciary or the legislature to take. So the arguments against are also somewhat valid, and it is for your opinion to decide whether it is right and wrong. I will conclude it with my opinion, and then we can ask the questions later on.
Yes,
As
ma'am.
for the constitution, yeah, I am aware it's already 45
Yes,
minutes
ma'am.
down the line. So I am just concluding in another 5-10 minutes, right? So as per the Constitution, the state is entrusted with the duty to promote and protect right to life, and every individual should be given, should be made aware, should be given legal remedies, and legal aid should be provided time and again for them to know that it is their basic fundamental right to live with dignity. And even if there are certain circumstances where passive euthanasia is concerned, to be considered, it is rarest of rare circumstances that we will acknowledge or maybe see. So there are case laws and landmark judgments with respect to that also. So the argument advanced by few state governments was that Section 309 was the instrumental in conviction drug traffickers and suicide bombers who survived. So this is a very basic and a very valid point. For the people who are suicide bombers and drug traffickers who tried committing suicide through through terrorism or maybe unlawful acts, and they survive. So should it be decriminalized? Because then you are not charging or you are not putting appropriate sections against those people. Only attracting IPC and everything will not suffice. You need to cover every ambit of the law, right? So the arguments given by state government, one being this, Then the second proposition that came is that it is also absurd, and there are separate laws to deal with these offenders like NDPS, Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967. IPC is there where we talk about criminal conspiracy, waging war against government, and so on. Attempts to murder. This is there, but you also need to cover the ambit of mental health care, and you need to charge them with the, because earlier, apart from drawing and attracting all these sections, Section 309 was also covered, which enhanced the punishment under Indian Penal Code, being making it a criminal offence. Now, if it is not a criminal offence, so the ambit under which Section 115 is concerned of the Mental Health Care Act, it is not a criminal offence. Instead, this can be taken as a plea by certain offenders, and see, I am not mentally stable, I am mentally ill. So instead of trying them, because there are certain limitations in our law. For a person who is of unsound mind, we do not charge, or we do not take necessary criminal offences against them, because we have a lenient approach towards them.
Yes.
And then we provide appropriate help to them. So I think this acts as a drawback. It acts as a limitation also in certain aspects, because if a person declares themselves as unsound mind, or a person of a lunatic, or any mentally ill person coming under the definition of the Mental Health Care Act, then you can't really do anything about it. You have to give that person mental health treatment. You have to get that person admitted in the mental health institution, and that a person, instead of going to prison for the so-and-so offences, will be very conveniently admitted in a hospital or an establishment, and so on. So this is one major drawback which I think is very legit and very valid, and we need to improvise and maybe amend in our laws in the future with regard to that, so that we can, instead of acting, or maybe taking plea of these loopholes, one can actually take appropriate legal remedies, and in a very suffice manner. So last but not the least, there are certain challenges also that are covered under the ambit of the Mental Health Care Act. We'll discuss in pointers. Pehla, obviously, we discussed decriminalization of suicide. Second, it promotes the electroconclusive theory. So this is in which this is a very theory which a very common man knows, that you are given electric shocks and so on. So time and again in certain treatments, although it is prohibited under law, but it promotes. So these are the challenges which we need to amend. However, it is out of the bounds of minor. A minor cannot choose their representatives individually or independently. Because now we come across, we look at the survey also, we see that a lot of people of the college and the school-going children are going through mental illness, and they are not acknowledged, they are not recognized under this law. So that means meant. I think there should be stringent laws on providing mental awareness, mental health acknowledgement in colleges and health institutions, so that people are more aware, because India is a youth-oriented country, and majority population of India is the youth. And having only youth not being covered under the ambit of mental health care, then really doesn't give a very good and a very wider aspect. So by just concluding in another 2 lines, I would say that mental health legislation is very essential. Everybody needs to become aware. We need to accept every individual, provide them with every possible treatment, make them aware of their rights. Under the Mental Health Care Act, legislation can also create and can be enforced standards of high quality medical care, improve access to care, and protect civil, political, social, and even mentally moral rights of an individual. So I would like to thank now, not taking much time of you, to give me an opportunity to maybe throw some light on the Mental Health Care Act. So if there are any questions by our viewers, so we may take up them, and I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, ma'am, and viewers. Thank you for your words, ma'am. So now I would like to request the viewers to put your questions in the comment section as we are running out of our time. So viewers, if you have any doubt, then you can comment. Ma'am, I have one question.
Yes, please.
Don't you think that discrimination attempts to suicide can harm the interest of women who try to take their life owing to domestic violence?
So, like I talked about domestic violence earlier in my session, Chandra
Yes,
Jyoti,
ma'am.
I will just answer this question in one simple line by saying suicide is not an answer to any situation. And for people who think that there is a need to maybe end their life, that is what the ambit covers this only. They need to be given appropriate mental health care and mental awareness, right? They should be given appropriate medicines, medication, and treatments with regard to that. So for people who are trying to commit suicide, and even if so decriminalizing, see what is the basic meaning of decriminalizing. You are decriminalizing, you are not making it a criminal offense. For a survivor of a domestic violence, if by any chance the person survives, would you really want to encourage any criminal charges against, so that no, you committed you committed a criminal offense and you should be subject to punishment and the penalties under the IPC? Or would you want to provide mental awareness and appropriate treatments to such individuals and recognize them key situations can be better? And then if it is a scenario of domestic violence, then please make them aware of the legal rights. There are so many things that comes under the Domestic Violence Act and even under the IPC. When we talk about 498A cruelty, then there is, you can file a complaint directly in the court under Section 12 BB Act. So suicide is not an answer. So decriminalizing it only is helping in a way that for the survivors and the aftermath of the incident, please don't charge them, rather help them in every way possible. I hope that answers.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And I can see some viewers put their question in the comment section. So, ma'am, our next question is how this act is benefiting the society. What amendments would you recommend to this act?
Yeah. So this act is a very new act. Like we said, it was enacted in 2017 and enforced in 2018. So if we see the history of this act, it started its journey in 2011, and then time and again it took almost 5-6 years for it to come into force. So there are various challenges that we are facing under this act. People are not aware of their rights. There are institutions who are not authorized to practice. There are psychologists who are not recognized under this act as mental health professionals still practicing, and people are not aware because the publicity and the advertisement is such that people are not aware about what is right and what is wrong under the legal laws. And then, obviously, like I just talked about, decriminalization of suicide has its pros and cons. Like it has its pros, the cons being for the suicide bombers or any other provider, you are just giving them a plea to maybe safeguard yourself from appropriate way. So I would just recommend, as an individual and as a litigating lawyer, we need to have more stringent laws with more deterrent punishments in today's situation and scenarios. Reason being, we instead of providing loopholes to the offenders, we should be providing such stringent laws that there is no any escape for them to leave. So this is my basic and the most foremost advice or maybe opinion under this act.
Thank you, ma'am. And one more question we have. As mental health retardation is not included, what about psychological disorder?
like schizophrenia
Like, yeah,
and
psychomatic disorder, personality and illusion
hallucination disorders. Are they mental illness?
disorders are mental illness.
So I think this question is asked by a psychotherapist, Aditya, because I could see the question also.
Yes, ma'am.
So Aditya, thank you so much for your question. I would just bring you back to the definitions that I talked here. So mental illness is defined in Section 2S of the Mental Health Care Act. Like I said, it is a very comprehensive definition, and yes, mental retardation is not included. But what we include are the substantial disorders of thinking, mood perception. So I think this really answers your question that all the disorders like bipolar or any psychological disorders which you just cited, schizophrenia, personality disorders, these are covered under the ambit of mental illness. Because the definition only starts by saying it means a substantial disorder of thinking, mood perception, orientation, or memory that grossly impairs your judgment. So I think the definition is very comprehensive and should answer your question that yes, all these are covered under the ambit of mental illness under the Mental Health Care Act.
Thank you, ma'am. And one question is asked by psychotherapist Aditya again. Where is the
Yeah.
mental health review board in Mumbai?
Mental Health Review Board in Mumbai, I am really not aware about your state authorities. I will have to look into that. You may please take my email and I can get back to you because I am not aware about the situation in Mumbai person. But yes, in Delhi it is available and it is in Noida also it is available. And if you want any particular information in Mumbai with respect to any particular area, please feel free to contact me. You can DM me, and I will definitely look into it.
Ma'am, the session will end.
Thank you so much.
No, ma'am, we can go live again.
No, definitely. It is my pleasure. And I would, lastly, but I would, last but not least, I would really like to thank you and Legal Route team to give me this opportunity to talk about such a topic which is really close to my heart. And last but not the least, I would just want to say that for anybody who is going through certain challenges, who is recognizing or identifying them as mentally ill, we have so many organizations and platforms that are there to help you. Me personally, being a member of one, there is one organization by the name of Yupogati. So I am also on the panel because I am an advocate for mental health awareness. So there are certain organizations and institutions and NGOs. Please feel free to approach us. We will provide you and guide you with all the legal and appropriate remedies. Thank you so much for
Thank you so much,
having me.
ma'am. Thank you so much
And
for your valuable
Right.
words and your time.
Thank you
I
so
hope
much,
everyone
Anjali.
will understand.
Yeah, the session is about to end.
Yes.
So we'll take your leave and thank you so much, viewers.
Yes, thank you all. And thank you so much, ma'am, once again.
I would just end the session now. Thank you.